Big update. Devils fans can rejoice when I say that a sense of normalcy returning on Saturday as we finish up the Four Nations tournament. What a tournament it has been. Welcome into Devils Digest. If you haven't already, go ahead, hit the subscribe button to stay up to date with all the newest Devils conversation. And the conversation just got a whole lot sweeter today. Amanda Stein had it. Nico Hischier said he feels like he should be good to go once the schedule resumes on Saturday. Huge news for the Devils. Dealing with some oblique discomfort in the game against Montreal. Took a cross check. That's kept him sidelined for the past little bit. But Nico Hischier expected to get back in game action on Saturday against Dallas. Huge news for the Devils. I mean, you look back to where this team was before the Four Nations tournament had started. A lot of ups and downs. Not a great January whatsoever. And then there's a couple of things you can point at to or look at when you look at this team. Not a great January. Struggled down the stretch towards the end of towards the beginning of the Four Nations. And one thing that was consistent with the Devils, because not a whole lot was the injuries. Once one player got hurt, they spread around quicker than the flu's got around this year. Erik Haula missed some time. Stefan Noesen was sick. Jonas Siegenthaler out for a little bit. Jacob Markstrom still a little bit hurt. Nico Hischier obviously now coming back. But when you look at this Devils team and before the Four Nations started, the injury bug was hitting them. They were hurt. They weren't playing the same type of game they were playing before the break in January, before the new year started. It wasn't the same team that they were playing. And when you go ahead and you look at this team and you look at the whole entire lineup of the four group, because that's where I kind of really want to focus. I think that's going to be Tom Fitzgerald's focus at the trade deadline. I look down the middle right now. Obviously, they have Jack Hughes, Erik Haula, Justin Dowling, Curtis Lazar on the fourth line. Obviously, Nico Hischier is going to fit right in there. When you look at this Devils forward group, and you look at the other teams in the division, go through Rangers, Carolina, Pittsburgh, Washington as well, all the teams that are still, I guess, somewhat in it for the playoffs. What is something that the Devils stand apart from all the other teams when you look at that? When Nico Hischier's in the lineup. 2 number 1 overall elite centers. No other team in the Metropolitan Division can say that. No other team is elite down the middle. You go over to New York, doesn't match with New Jersey. Go over to Washington, great year, doesn't match with New Jersey down the middle. Down the middle is where the Devils can stay and have stayed consistent. Their 2 centers, Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes, both lead the team in goals, 24 goals each. Down the middle, this is where this team's going to win. And now when you look at Stanley Cup teams, that's where they're good. They're good down the middle. There's no real questions with Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier when they're in the lineup. There's inconsistencies outside of that. But when Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier are in the lineup, there's not another team in the Metropolitan that can compete with that down the middle. And how are you going to beat a team? You got to take advantage of the things that you have, the outliers that you have. The outlier the Devils have is they're very good down the middle. They've got 2 elite number 1 centers playing first and second line. No other team in the Metropolitan Division has that. So the Devils have to be able to use it to their advantage. Now they can use it with their advantage coming back with Nico Hischier. Looks like he's going to play on Saturday. I mean, just go ahead. Take a look at Nico Hischier's numbers this year. 51 games, 24 goals, 19 assists. He's got a Corsi 58.2, just over 58%. The team has the puck. They're in the offensive zone when Nico Hischier is on the ice. And Nico Hischier is also a great defensive center. I think he finished second in the Selke voting last season, or maybe it was the year before. But he's one of the top centers in the NHL. So when I really look at this Devils team and how they're going to be competitive in the Eastern Conference, they're going to need Nico Hischier and Jack Hughes at the least to stay competitive in this Eastern Conference. Like I said, there's been not a lot of consistencies for New Jersey this year. Defensively, they were really good in December. January struggled. Team struggled. They got the injury bug. They struggled. This team needs Jack Hughes and Nico Hischier down the middle, where other teams are going to have a tough time to match up with that. Creates tough defensive matchups. So it's really good that the Devils are going to get Nico Hischier back beforehand and be able to experiment with that, because obviously the trade deadline's coming up. You want to see what maybe works. I mean, it's just one last look. They got 7 games after the Four Nations ends, and then they're playing, and then it's a trade deadline. And that's your roster going into the playoffs. So to get Nico Hischier back, get one last look at how these lines look, will be really important for New Jersey as they finish up, chasing, one of the top seeds in the Metropolitan Division. But getting Nico Hischier back, great for the Devils. Obviously I mentioned a couple of the other injuries. Looking at it, Jacob Markstrom, little bit of a kind of something. Maybe not the update that we were hoping for, but apparently it is part of the process. Jacob Markstrom was on the ice this morning for the early part of practice. Wasn't part of the full session though. But this is all a part of the rehab process. So nothing to kind of, get frantic about or get scared about or upset about. This is kind of what we expected going into it. So Jacob Markstrom expected to, join later on. Not going to be back once we get back on Saturday. Jacob Markstrom won't be in action, but that's not one of my huge worries when I look at the Devils, because I look at how Jacob Markstrom's played in the 7-game absence of Jake Allen, and I mean, he's won 4 times. He's got a .934 save percentage. The only game that maybe was a little shaky was the Buffalo game, but outside of that, he's given them a chance to win every single game. I mean, the Boston game, he comes in cold, gets, the shutout, I guess. Not a real shutout, but it's able to come in for Jacob Markstrom when he went out in that game, get them a 2-1 win. So, I mean, there's one game. Vegas, 37 saves. They lose the game. They weren't winning that game. Okay? You got, at one point in that game, the shots were like 35-12. They weren't winning that game. That wasn't on Jacob Markstrom. Jacob Markstrom's giving them a .934, 2 shutouts in that 7-game stretch. Shots went up a little bit. We saw Jacob Markstrom, how good Jacob Markstrom was back in January when the Devils had 7 straight games of under 20 shots. It's an NHL record. So when this team is playing well, they're good. But when it's inconsistencies, and that's what we've seen as of late, possibly due to the injuries, you get a different product out on the ice. But when you get this type of product, well, team looks a lot better. So short term, not having Jacob Markstrom, not as huge of a loss as someone like a Nico Hischier, when you can't have that extra thing that other teams don't have. When you can't throw 2 elite number 1 overall centers on your top 2 lines. Power play maybe struggle a little bit as well. So when I look at this, getting Nico Hischier back, obviously a huge thing for New Jersey going down, obviously with the trade deadline coming up, because I expect them to be active, especially with Jonas Siegenthaler being out and being put on long-term injured reserve. Gonna have some money to work with. Gonna have a few options. There's a few things that they need to clean up before this trade deadline is done. I mean, what players are they going to be in on? I mean, this is kind of nice that they get Nico Hischier back and Jack Hughes back, and they can try out all the combinations that they want before they really have to make a decision, because that decision is going to come up soon. So to have Nico Hischier back, knowing that you're not going to have to even find someone for a replacement for him, is huge for the Devils. Devils fans definitely should be happy with this. Jacob Markstrom, all part of the rehab process. So we'll hope to get him back soon. Let me know in the comments below what you think about what the Devils should do, what type of lineup they should throw out, and what type of activity they'll have at the deadline. Definitely good to get Nico Hischier back. Let me know what kind of line combinations you want to see when we get back. All right. Thanks, guys.